Okay, so this is the last subsection for topic A, and we're going to focus on translation, which relates to programming languages. So we're going to start out by talking about different types of programming languages. So the type of programming language we're going to focus on today is going to be high-level programming languages. These are programming languages like Python, Java, or C that have a syntax or that are written in language that regular people can understand. Now, moreover, these programming languages can usually be used on different types of systems and can be run on different CPUs, as they're usually translated in some way from this form to machine code, ones or zeros, which is really what CPUs are going to be executing. Now, two methods of this translation are going to be compilation or interpretation, which we're going to talk about later on. And high-level languages are the slowest type of language because they have to go through some kind of process to get to machine code, which is usually going to take some time. Now, the next type of programming language is going to be assembly. And assembly looks like this, and generally, it's a type of programming language that can be read by a specific type of CPU. So each CPU architecture or type of CPU is going to have its own assembly language. And because it takes less work to go from an assembly language to machine code, usually it runs faster. Although we still need to use a program called an assembler to turn it from this to machine code. And finally, we have machine code, just binary zeros and ones, which we've seen before. Now, it's really difficult, if not impossible, for a human to just write code in ones and zeros to make a program work, and hence it's the reason why we use some kind of programming language. Now, first, we're going to talk about interpreters and interpreted programming languages. So interpreters are pieces of software that help turn certain programming languages into ones and zeros. So some examples of programming languages that use interpreters are Python, JavaScript, and PHP. Now, they go through the source code or the code in the program line by line. And for each line, they convert that line of code to machine code and execute it in the CPU before moving on to the subsequent line. Now, if there are any errors during execution of any of these lines, then the execution stops, we see an error message, and we need to fix that before we can run the program again. And this process of interpretation is done every time the program is run. So to give you a more insightful example of how it works. So let's say we have a loop, right? Now, every time the loop runs and every iteration, we're going to be interpreting that section again. So for example, if we have some Python code and that's supposed to run 5 times, each time the code that sits inside the loop is going to be interpreted so it can be executed. Now, on the other hand, we have compilers, and compilers, they take source code as input. So you'll be writing some code in a language like C++ or Java, although Java is kind of a weird one that kind of sits in different areas. C++ is a great example. It converts source code to something called object code, which is in binary, and can then be executed by the CPU. So the difference between compilers and between interpreters is interpreters are going to execute our code line by line, versus compilers take everything at once and convert it. Well, so when we say that interpreters execute code line by line, that means they're going to take that code. They're going to take the code for one line, turn it into ones and zeros, execute it, and then move on to the next line. Versus a compiler is going to take all the code at once, turn it into ones and zeros. So basically we're going to end up with something like this. And we might turn that into an executable file, which we can click on and run the program. So we're not going through line by line. We're taking everything and turning it into ones and zeros, and then we're going to execute that. So just to kind of summarize what we talked about, interpreters execute code line by line using a program called an interpreter. Interpreters are programs that execute code line by line. And compilers translate the entire code to machine code, which can then be executed. Now, compilers are generally faster because we don't have to go through and do this translation process, turning the code into ones and zeros while we're running the program, right? That's already going to be pre-done for compilers, versus with interpreters, we're going through that every time we're running the program. On the other hand, interpreters can generally take less memory because of the fact that we're really only going to take one line of code and put it into memory at one time, right? Because memory is only going to be holding data for existing programs or programs that are currently running. And we're only going to be running one line of code at a time, so less memory is going to be required as compared to a compiler, where we're going to take all of the ones and zeros and basically the entire program and put that into memory so it can be executed. And one potential problem for interpreters that compilers don't have is that in order to run a program that's interpreted, we actually need to give the end user the source code. And the end user could look into the source code and find ways to make it work in a way that we wouldn't want. Versus the end user for compiled programs, they only get access to the ones and zeros, which is difficult to reverse engineer. It's difficult to see how the program actually works just from a compiled program or an executable file. And I've been using this term executable file, but if you have a Windows computer and you've ever seen .exe, that's an executable file, and that's going to be something that comes from code that's been compiled. Now, another type of code we're going to talk about is going to be bytecode, and we're going to first look at this through the example of Python. Now, the way that Python works is when you run a Python file, yes, we're going through each line, but in each line, the code is going to be converted to bytecode first. And bytecode is essentially a set of low-level instructions that don't look that different from assembly language. They're not assembly language, but they can be executed more quickly than just Python. So bytecode is sort of an intermediary that allows us to execute code more quickly. Now this bytecode is then run by CPython, which is a virtual machine. So that virtual machine is going to accept that bytecode and then execute all the instructions in that bytecode. And generally, again, we're going to be talking about bytecode that corresponds to a single line at a time. Now, one reason this can be useful is that, or one way that this can be faster rather, is that we can save the bytecode that we create each time to a PyCache folder, which you might have seen if you've already done some Python programming. And this way, we don't need to go through this process of compiling, of taking our Python code and turning it into bytecode, which is much faster. We just have the fast bytecode already pre-made, already cached, and so we can run our program more quickly than we could before. So after the first time running it, after we go through this compilation process, each time we can run our fast bytecode rather than taking the time to convert our Python to bytecode, which is then going to be executed by our virtual machine. We go straight to the cached bytecode. And again, this is something like what bytecode looks like. So we have a Python file. We're going to use actually a compiler, and that compiler is going to take our Python file and turn it into bytecode. The bytecode is going to be sent to a virtual machine, and that virtual machine is actually going to execute that bytecode, which is going to do whatever we want the program to do. And this bytecode can be stored in PyC files, which are essentially as caching the bytecode, so we don't have to go through this process, the compilation process, again. Now, to kind of delve more deeply into what bytecode is, so as we said before, bytecode is an intermediate form of code. So it sits between human readable source code and native machine code, and it's easier for machine to execute. One great thing about bytecode and interpreters in general is that like the programs, first of all, interpreters are not tied to any specific CPU or hardware, and neither is going to be bytecode, right? Because bytecode is ultimately going to be run by a virtual machine that's going to translate code that can be run on whatever CPU or operating system that we're running our program on. Now, some of the things about bytecode that we already saw in our example is it's executed by a virtual machine and it's platform independent, right? So we can run bytecode. We should be able to run bytecode on any platform with any operating system or CPU, as long as the virtual machine is capable of translating the bytecode into something that runs on that CPU. So for example, we could write code on a MacBook, run it on a MacBook, and then we could give someone else that code who has a Windows machine with a different type of CPU, and they should be able to run that as well. So this is just an example. Here we have some Java code, and this is our source code. Again, Java is actually kind of a weird, not weird, but a different sort of example. So it's not the ideal example for how bytecode works, but it is good enough. So we go from source to bytecode, right? And then our bytecode is going to be basically translated by our virtual machine into something like this, which is going to be code that corresponds to a specific processor, and then it's going to be executed. Now, another type of compilation method we have is going to be just-in-time compilation. So basically in just-in-time compilation, we're going to be translating code into machine code as the program runs. So this is kind of a bit more like interpretation, but it's kind of more of a hybrid of both interpretation and compilation. So basically what we're going to happen is the compiler that's doing just-in-time compilation is going to see which code is running most frequently in our program, or which is present most frequently in our program. And it's going to compile that code so we don't have to translate it each time. And everything else that isn't there as frequently in our code is just going to be interpreted. So it's essentially a hybrid between both compilation and interpretation. We compile that code that is run most frequently, and then we can just reuse that compiled code throughout our source code. And then we interpret the less frequently used code. And Java does use this, which is why we said that Java isn't exactly the best example of either compilation or interpretation. JavaScript can also use this. Just-in-time compilation that's going to happen through the browser. And there are a variety of other languages. And this can be a very quick method for executing programs, hence the reason why we can run some pretty complex JavaScript programs in our browser. Now, if we want to compare this, I know this is called just-in-time compilation. If we want to compare this to regular compilation, we can see that like in just-in-time compilation, we're actually compiling the code while the program is running. That's what we meant by runtime. Okay. So while the program is running, we're going to go see, okay, which parts of the code are being utilized most frequently, and then we're going to go ahead and compile those. And that way we're saving the amount of interpretation that we have to do. Versus with a regular compiler, we're compiling all of the code before, and then we don't have any interpretation going on. We're just executing that, the result of that compilation. Now, one thing that the just-in-time compilation does is it can actually speed up how the program runs, or can speed the program up itself by seeing like how it's used when it runs. So if it sees certain blocks of code being used more often, then obviously it's going to compile those and make it run faster, versus compilation doesn't really take that into account. And another advantage of just-in-time compilation is that it works with virtual machines. So we can engage in just-in-time compilation in a virtual machine. And that means that we can run code on different types of computers, versus with compilation, we can only essentially compile our code into something that runs on the platform that we're currently working on. So we can't move between different operating systems or different types of CPUs and run the same code. Now, this is also another disadvantage for compilation, for regular compilation, as compared with interpreters. Now, what I want to do as well is I want to show you where bytecode fits into the whole just-in-time compilation, right? So we know that bytecode is going to be an intermediate form of code. And it's going to be lower level and executed by a virtual machine, right? Which is faster than our source code. Now, basically just-in-time compilation, its foundation is built on bytecode. So when we talked about how we're going to compile different parts of the program that are more frequently used, that means we're going to turn them into bytecode, because bytecode can be run a lot more quickly. And so, we kind of have two advantages, right? First, we have bytecode that can be run more quickly than the source code in our program. And secondly, we're just turning one block of code into bytecode that can be reused throughout our program, rather than that process being done every time we want to use that code. But anyways, when we talk about compilation in just-in-time, or in just-in-time compilation, and we're specifically talking about the compilation of frequently used blocks of code, we're turning them into bytecode. And then that can later be executed. Anyways, that brings us to the end of this particular subtopic. And as usual, I have some channel updates. So I haven't put up practice questions yet, but again, that's the plan. So just stay tuned for that. And this will be available to members. I think the first batch of practice questions I'm going to put out is actually going to be one of the specimen papers. So I'm going to solve it. More videos are going to be edited through the summer. And remember, these videos will be edited and re-updated as we see the first exam in May 2027. And the next video that's probably going to be out sometime soon is going to be on our next topic, which is going to focus on networks. And it's going to be the first subtopic, which is going to focus on network fundamentals. Anyways, if you like this video, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.